What's up, everybody? Welcome back to this week's episode of Between the 20s. I'm obviously joined by Mike and Bryce as usual, and today we are talking about the MLB. These guys' favorite sport. So, Mike, how you feeling today?
Feeling good. Always feel good talking about the MLB. Great to be back here. Feel like it's been a little while, but that's just because my playoff picks didn't really come to fruition. So,
Yeah. You only got one wrong in the NFL.
two games.
Who'd you pick?
You picked
Titans.
Baltimore and
You
Minnesota.
didn't pick the Titans. Oh, Baltimore, they lost. Yeah, right. Bryce, how you feeling today?
Good. We so very rarely get to talk about baseball, and we have a doozy on the docket for today. But
I'm burying the lead, though.
Yeah, we sure do have a doozy. If you have been living under a rock, then you might not know that the Houston Astros have been punished by the MLB, not the NFL, of course, for stealing signs and with the use of cameras and videotaping the signs and then conveying that information to the hitters by slapping trash cans.
It's banging trash cans.
Banging
it's a banging
trash
scandal
cans while they're at the plate. And so
that's what the report said.
a couple days ago, the MLB brought down their punishment. They suspended the GM, Jeff Lunhow,
Banging scheme.
and the coach, or the manager, I should say, AJ Hinch of the Astros, as well as they fined the organization $5 million, and they actually took away their next first and second round picks for the next 2 years, which has an estimated value, Mike can explain this a little bit more, an estimated value of around $28 million for this franchise. So it's a big step backward for this franchise. But we're not really going to be talking about the Astros. We're going to be talking more about the punishment. So the question is, did the MLB get this punishment? Were they too harsh? Were they too lenient? Or was the punishment just right? So, Bryce, we're going to kick it off. Start with you. What do you think?
So, as per usual, I seem to take the extreme sides on these, and I'm going to take the extreme negative. This was, for me, by no means enough for what they did. I do like that they took draft picks away. I personally thought it should have been at least 3 years worth of draft picks. The suspensions for Jeff Luhnow and AJ Hinch ultimately don't really matter. They got fired subsequently after. As we're seeing now, teams are preemptively doing this with Alex Cora getting fired from the Boston Red Sox.
Potentially Carlos Beltran as well.
For the
See,
New
that's a
York
developing
Mets.
situation.
So we'll see what happens there, but that ends up being moot. A $5 million fine is, like, for these teams, slap on the wrist.
It's the maximum fine.
It's still
And they gotta
nothing.
pump the
Then
maximum up.
that's an issue with the institutional fines that they set in the MLB. But for me, what really makes this too lenient is the fact they let them keep the championship. I don't understand how you can have a punishment like this without stripping away the title. I'm not saying they necessarily won because of the cheating, right? Because you still have to put it in, you still have to, hit the ball. But when you know what's coming, it's severely easier, extremely easier to hit the baseball. And we know that they matched the way of the World Series in 2017, stealing one away from maybe the Yankees and the Dodgers in that year. I don't see how that can't be a part of it. Even for me, I understand that in the short term, people might still say, oh, the Astros won the World Series, whatever. It ends up being like Barry Bonds. Barry Bonds still hit 74, but there's an asterisk next to it. And for a lot of fans, including myself, I still think the number is 61, right? So it's going to end up being more like 1994 when there was no World Series winner. So you're effectively condoning this for the Astros, and their punishment has no bearing on the current team. Outside of losing the GM and the manager, it really has no bearing on the current roster, and it only has bearings on the future, and not a super deep future at that.
All right. So I think the punishment is adequate. I'm going to break down 3 main reasons. First, let's talk about the players. Suspending players is a problem because if you suspend players, they're already well dispersed around the league. I mean, hell, there was Alex Cora and Carlos Beltran, or Alex Cora was the bench coach, but they're even with different organizations. But just players who move even more are all throughout the league. So it's very difficult to suspend the players. That's one side of that two-headed dragon. But then you also have the second half, which is the fact that if you suspend players, you're going to have to do that through the Players Player Association, which is difficult. Obviously, they're going to push for their players, and in pushing for their players, they're going to try to prevent this suspension from occurring at all costs. The MLB also made clear in the investigation that they couldn't link specific players to the scandal. So that's why players weren't suspended, which I think that makes sense. I think we can both agree on that.
It totally makes sense. I know.
Yeah.
I know.
I know, but I just wanted to.
Anyway.
I wanted to just start off with that framework. But now we have to talk more about the organization. And first part of the organization, I think, is obviously the suspension of both Luhnow and AJ Hinch. First, if you suspend Jeff Luhnow, they basically force the Astros' hand to fire. I mean, you can argue that they bring him back after a year, but I really don't think that argument's very valid. You entrench him into this scheme. You make him. He may not have facilitated the entire thing, but he definitely had knowledge of it, and that's what they showed this investigation. And I think from that point on, the MLB, the Astros wouldn't want to deal with him, but he's instituted the system that won them the World Series. So I think that is a huge punishment there. To punish someone to punish someone that put together this World Series team, I think is a tremendous punishment. And now they're going to have to potentially rebuild their entire front office. So that to me is a big cost. And then AJ Hinch, finding a manager can be very tough, and I do think that suspending AJ Hinch in this way was the most appropriate action. And these are the two people the MLB can go after by making a statement saying, look, we suspended these guys, we did our job in the investigation. So that covers kind of the front office. Now, kind of third, the organization. First of all, I think the draft pick penalty is definitely, we have the fine, which is fair, maximum fine. They're just making a statement, I think, with that fine. They're saying we're taking the maximum fine. It's definitely not going to have a financial impact, I would say, on the team, but it is definitely making a statement. But moving on from the fine itself, thinking about this draft pick, revoking these draft picks, as we talked about, they're worth $28 million in future value, or in present value, which essentially means that if they had taken players with those picks, they would contribute roughly $28 million to the franchise's value in the future, which is a huge kind of drawback. I mean, those two picks are going to be foundations for your team and have the potential to be foundations of your team for years to come. So I think that's definitely fair. But I think that's something that kind of a way to frame this argument is to think about what the Astros mean to the MLB as a whole. And I think if you consider that, then this punishment becomes much more reasonable. And that is that Houston is a growing city. They're one of the largest growing cities in the United States. And the Astros are an organization that's up and coming, and everyone's getting behind the Astros. And if people are getting behind the Astros, that's increasing the popularity of the MLB as a whole. And if you have a good Astros team, people are just going to continue to flock towards Minute Maid Park and pump that ballpark full of fans, full of energy, and make the MLB a more interesting league. So I think that is where they were kind of on trying to do this tightrope act of we need to support this franchise, but at the same time, we need to instill sort of the values of Major League Baseball. And I think they managed to do the best of both, where they didn't hurt the Astros that much in present, which I think is fair because you want to keep Houston stimulated, but they did hurt them, and it's also difficult to do, as we discussed, with just sort of suspending players, but they did definitely hurt them in the future. And they also made them rethink their system, which I think is very important as well.
That's valid, and I understand that the MLB, they're not going to prevent the Astros from going to the playoffs. They're not going to do what happened to Louisville a couple years ago in college basketball, where they actually prevented them from making the tournament. That's obviously not going to happen in Major League Baseball. They're not going to say, hey, Astros, you're done for a year, and now you have the AL West back down to 4 teams effectively. That's not going to happen. I'm not saying that should be a part of it. For me, it boils down to a couple different things. One, I already mentioned about the championship. I don't understand how that is not stripped. This cheating scandal is a key component to winning this. I
think so. You strip the championship. What are you doing though? Like, how does that look? People know the Astros won the championship. It's like if somebody brings something up in court and it's objected. People all saw that it happened and they saw the result of it. Technically, they're supposed to wipe it from their memory. But it's still there.
But it's not practical.
My idea is that it lives in infamy. Almost like the 1919 White Sox. Barry Bonds winning the World Series, the home run crown.
Do you not think that it's already living in infamy just from this scandal without stripping the title officially? I think a lot of people are going to think of this title as fraudulent.
I don't know. I don't know. Obviously, you can't look in the future and see. Obviously, baseball fans like us, we will know. But I'm not sure the casual fan will ever be, let's say it's 2050. They're not going to look back at the Astros and be like, oh, this was their first pennant, too. This is their inaugural pennant. And you're saying that this team won their only World Series fraudulently, right? So you're now condoning this. That's one. I do understand that you can't have severe penalties. You mentioned, Mike, the draft pick compensation here, where it's $28 million. That's hefty. I do understand that. And first and second round draft picks are what the Astros have lived and died by. Carlos Correa, first overall pick. Alex Bregman, second overall pick. George Springer, late first round pick, or later first round pick. Early round pick, I should say. This team lives and dies by the early parts of the draft. And I do understand that. But let's look at this roster for a second. Carlos Correa is sub 25. Alex Bregman is sub 25. Jose Altuve is still in his prime. George Springer is still in his prime. I don't know if these draft picks would even matter in the future. If we're talking about how this organization is going to go in the next couple of years, right? These next 2 draft picks, they still wouldn't even be there. Not to mention the fact that their prospect pool is crazy deep. They have Kyle Tucker, who's among the top outfield prospects in baseball. They have Forrest Whitley, who has one of the top 3 fastballs in baseball and set to become like a Garrett Cole. That's his player comp. His player comp is Garrett Cole. They have 2 players in the top 20 according to MLB Pipeline for who are the best prospects in the league.
But how do you punish an organization talent-wise?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that based on the status of this organization now, they should have gotten rid of more picks in the future. The argument is not necessarily that they should have hurt the players.
But all of the things that you just said are still going to be true. Whether they take away more picks now, less picks now, they're still going to have this monster current roster and monster farm system for the next few years.
I understand that, but let's say you take away the next 5 years worth of draft picks, right? That was basically what I was thinking was the maximum here. Take away 10 draft picks, right? That's going to set the organization back a couple of years. By taking away these 2,
set them back. I think that could set them back a long time,
sure.
10 years.
But these 4 draft picks, I don't think will, because in the long run, what would they use those draft picks for? Maybe they just they could have missed, but that's always out there. If you have 5 years worth, they're not going to miss 10 draft picks. With the way this organization goes.
I mean, they could trade
them. That was the only thing. That they could possibly trade the players that they got with those picks. A la Matthew Liberatore, who's got traded to St. Louis from the Tampa Bay Rays. But for me, it's the fact that 2 years worth, you're looking at one of the younger teams in baseball. They do need some rotation help. Verlander's getting older. Garrett Cole left for the Yankees. Wade Miley left in free agency as well. But you have McCullers, you have McHugh, you have Forrest Whitley coming up, and you have Josh James in the bullpen. He's coming off surgery. They're going to be a good team for the foreseeable future. So these 2 year draft picks ultimately don't matter.
But then you're saying that no matter your argument, the way I see it should be that no matter the status of the team, they should the picks for the next 10 years, 5 years should be taken away. That's the way that I see your argument. Because then because you're docking this, you're essentially trying to dock. Really, everything equates down to dollars. I'm an economics major, so it all comes down to money.
Here comes the money.
So you're taking away X amount of dollars from the team, right? That X amount of dollars is the same whether or not, irrespective of their current franchise success.
I understand that. That. I think there's a fundamental thing here, though, that if you cheat, you're probably not going to be bad. Because if you're cheating, you have a competitive advantage, and you have that competitive advantage, you're going to do better more often than not. Right? The Tigers could have cheated, and maybe they would have been good. I don't know. They lost 114 games, and they lost 114 games the right way. The Astros won 110 games and did it the wrong way.
107.
107. Well, in 2017, whatever it was. But they won 100-plus games the wrong way. If I'm baseball, I'd rather have the Tigers. I'm not saying as an owner, but I'm saying if I'm Major League Baseball, I'd rather have a team lose 114 games the wrong way than 107.
But how does that affect their punishment?
I'm saying it shouldn't affect the punishment because let's say another team cheats. All right? Okay. Let's just say another team cheats.
Okay.
You lose your next 5 first 2-round draft picks.
Yeah.
So 10 draft picks. Irrespective of the team, but the fundamental difference here is that if you have a team that's cheating, they're probably not going to be bad. So if you're looking at the state of the roster, that's an outside question. Because really, I just think that it's not enough of a punishment that's going to set an organization back. Moreover, I don't think that in aggregate this is enough of a punishment to keep teams from doing this again. I don't know. I firmly don't think so. If I'm an organization and I see, all right, I lose 4 prospects and I'll just have to replace my manager and a little $5 million fine and a GM, I'm going to cheat every time I win the World Series.
That's where I think that you're going to be guilty in the court of public opinion, as you kind of hinted at before, where people are going to look down on your title, your franchise, whatever, if they see that you're cheating.
Of course, but I think the fundamental question here is, did this punishment do enough to deter other teams? This was an unprecedented
I know, but
thing.
it's not just the punishment. I think just the very fact that they investigated it and came out with this result is kind of defaces the Astros a little bit.
I'm not saying it doesn't. It absolutely
but I think
the
that
Astros.
Defacing it that much does act as a deterrent for further teams.
All right, here. Let's do a little thought experiment here.
Okay.
You're Dave Dombrowski. All right. Dave,
Oh boy.
Dave,
What farm system did I roll out this time?
For those of you who don't know, Dave Dombrowski is like a serial GM. He's been GM at like what, 6 teams? He architected the Red Sox 2008, 2018, and fired the subsequent year.
Architect and in some ways head of demolition.
Yep.
You're Dave Dombrowski. You're looking for a new job. It's probably not even a good example because he's probably gonna get another job sometime. But you're a GM. You're coming in and you're saying, you know what? I'm just gonna 5 years. We'll cheat a little bit. I'll make my money and get out. Is this enough to deter you from cheating in order to get your payday if you're looking to get an executive role?
Yes, I think so because I think that first of all, I think you have to question whether any other team is going to go after Luno or Hinch again in the future.
I think Luno's going to be blackballed. I think this is the end for him. AJ Hinch.
But then it's not worth it under any circumstance because you're giving up all of your future payment as a Major League Baseball general manager.
But Luno's career earnings are several million.
But he hasn't been cheating everywhere he's been, probably.
Well, let's assume this cheating scandal started around 2016, 2017.
All right.
When he's a year or two into his tenure. He was hired, I believe, in 2014. That's like, it was probably in the works. He's the one who hired Alex Cora. I'm very hard-pressed to believe that he didn't know that this was part of Alex Cora when he hired him as bench coach. Very, very hard-pressed to believe that that wasn't a part of this somehow.
So you think Alex Cora came in in his interview and said, dude,
I got a way to win.
We're
We're
gonna
gonna steal some signs.
I got a way to win. Now, I'm not saying every GM is going to cheat because most GMs, I think, are going to have moral compasses, right? I know that if I were an executive, I would certainly not. But there's going to be some people out there that are going to say it's worth it.
You gotta realize that like you're sacrificing so much by cheating.
Yeah.
You're sacrificing. Theoretically, Luno is so successful he could have been a general manager for the next 30 years. Multiply, whatever, 3 million by 30. That's a lot of money that you're sacrificing.
That is possible.
90 million.
That is
now,
possible.
Who else is gonna hire him?
Nobody.
Doesn't
Exactly.
MLB or otherwise.
I'm sure he'll get a job somewhere.
You'll see him at your local
YMCA.
I understand that. I'm not sure this was enough to deter teams. Now, it might be. You might be right. We won't know for another couple of years.
Yeah, only time will tell.
I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's definite either way. I'm just not sure. I'd rather have something that was more definite. But to me, it boiled down to those two things, where it doesn't deter other teams, because that was the goal of the punishment. This was a completely new thing that MLB was supposed to bring the hammer down. I saw this meme on Facebook, and it was like, MLB bringing the hammer down. It was one of those like Fisher-Price toy hammers that just compresses and squeezes, which I thought was a good example of this. But MLB's bringing the hammer down, and this had to be a statement, which it partially was. It's a more severe punishment than there really ever has been in the sport. So that's one. And two, I'm still stuck on the title. The fact that they still have it. It's their first one, that they still have a title to begin with. If it's not in the record books with an asterisk, they're effectively condoning the fact that it happened.
I don't think that's true. I think that the public will look down on it enough to realize that. But at the same time, if you take that title away, you're losing so much of that Houston market.
I don't think so. My fandom, I'm a Yankee fan, and my fandom is not tied to the championships.
Because you have 27 of them. They only have one.
Well, thinking about this, maybe they just get to boost it another time. It's like, hey, we'll get our first one again.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's tough to argue that the biggest punishment in this sport history is too lenient. It's a tough argument to make, but there are a couple ways to look at it. So
Screw from the beginning, Bryce.
So that's going to be it for us on Between the 20s this week. We had a little bit of a new debate, MLB, hitting the hot topics right now. Check us out for more videos. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter. Let us know what you think about this or anything else sports related. Let us know if you guys want to see any other debate shows. But until then, see you next time, Between the 20s.